Alright, hi guys. I want to do a video today on something I've been wanting to do a video on for a while, and it's something that I'm actually a fan of, although I have not revealed the fact that I'm a fan of it on this channel until now. And that would be the UFC. And what I want to do a video on today is UFC 200 and my thoughts and predictions on that. But just a little bit about UFC, and maybe I'll go back and do another video kind of on more on the history of UFC or something like that. But what I want to talk about, like I said, is a little bit, about the UFC. Now, I've been pretty much watching UFC from the very beginning. Actually, I saw UFC 2 first. And I remember when I was in high school, a friend came up to me and he said, you got to see the Ultimate Fighting Championships. They're going to be on pay-per-view. We got to get it. And I'm like, oh, well, what's that? And he's like, they're finally going to answer the age-old question of which martial arts are the strongest. I'm like, are you serious? Oh, we got to get that. So, yeah, I remember when it started, or when UFC 2 started, which I believe was the beginning of '94. And, since then I've been a fan. I've watched as it's grown significantly. And what I want to talk about is UFC 200. Now, I haven't bought too many UFC pay-per-views. I usually go see them in a bar, or I'll watch them, on TV. They, re-release them. But I did get UFC 100. And UFC 100 at the time was the biggest pay-per-view for UFC at that time. Now, most likely, it is going to be UFC 200, I believe, because they really have a stacked card. As you know, the main event is the rematch of Jon Jones against Daniel Cormier. And that's really, an interesting matchup. My own prediction is that Daniel Cormier is going to pull this off. He came close last time, went the distance. He didn't manage to win, but Jon Jones is kind of laid off for a while. Hasn't had a fight. Well, he did have a fight last April, or this past April. But, he hasn't, had too much, fights in the UFC. So I kind of think, Daniel Cormier is going to be able to pull it off. Although, as you know, Jon Jones is pretty much undefeated. I mean, that loss against Matt Hamill was a disqualification because Jon Jones used the 12-6 elbow. But, I really wouldn't count that. In some ways, that was one of Jon's greatest performances. At least at that point. That was where I really realized that Jon Jones is the next big thing. Because no one had ever thrown Matt Hamill around like that. And, so, yeah, there's that disqualification. But other than that, I mean, he really is undefeated. And supposedly he's like one of those guys who is just really innately good at it. Why that is, probably do a whole other video on that, but he really just has a lot of natural ability in MMA, and supposedly he doesn't really train too hard. Daniel Cormier, on the other hand, is a very strong wrestling background, wrestled in the Olympics, I believe. I think he went for the bronze. I know he was in the Pan Am Games, so he really has a long, wrestling background. And I thought, actually, Cormier was going to pull it off last time, but I think this is the time. This is the time Daniel should be able to pull it off and win the match. Okay, the next match that I want to talk about is the one that was kept a secret. And actually, Ariel Helwani got in trouble for breaking the news. I guess they fired him, banned him for life from the UFC, but then Dana White reinstated him. So, what that match is Brock Lesnar against Mark Hunt. So it's the return of Brock Lesnar. and he says that, you know, he's completely recovered from his diverticulitis, and he expects to make, you know, a really good return and win the match. Mark Hunt, on the other hand, is, you know, really a great opponent. I mean, this is an interesting matchup because it is the classic match of the real good wrestler versus the real good striker. Obviously, to win, Brock is going to have to take Mark Hunt to the ground. How easily will he be able to do that? I don't know. I mean, Mark Hunt is a, you know, huge guy in his own right. And he has, you know, one-punch knockout power. You know, as you saw in his last match, he knocked Frank Mir out with one hit. He could easily knock Brock out with one hit, I believe. So, you know, Brock would have to avoid that and take him down and either do like a ground and pound or find some way to submit him. So, yeah, that should be interesting. My prediction here is that Mark Hunt is going to pull it off and win. A lot of people actually, I think, kind of want to see Mark Hunt win just because, you know, the whole thing with Brock Lesnar, they brought him in. They cut some corners with Brock because they didn't, you know, test him months in advance for steroids. They just kind of gave him an exemption of that. People are a little mad at that. Like, why would they give Brock Lesnar, you know, special treatment here in this situation? And, you know, the main reason is because he's such a massive draw. You know, people want to see Brock Lesnar. He sells the pay-per-view event. I mean, you look at the numbers they've done for every event that he's fought on, and they've done huge numbers each event. But again, you know, Mark Hunt, like I said, he's a great fighter. Mark Hunt, in a lot of ways, has really kind of had maybe one of the greatest comebacks in UFC history. Mark Hunt started out in Pride. He had his first match against Yoshida, who was a Japanese gold medalist in the Barcelona Olympics. And I believe Yoshida armbarred Mark Hunt in that match. And that, you know, that was kind of a freak show fight, you know, which is what, you know, the Japanese, you know, are kind of known for. It's what they like. You know, they like those kind of King Kong versus Godzilla kind of matches, you know, and probably if Ronda and CM Punk were in Pride, they both probably would have fought each other already, you know, but, yeah, anyways, yeah, Mark Hunt was in Pride, beat some big names in Pride. I know he beat Crow Cop, he beat Vanderlei, and then, you know, he had a losing streak. I think one of those losses was to Fader, but he ended up losing 6 matches in a row. You know, in the sport of MMA, that could be devastating for a fighter's career, losing 6 matches in a row. But then, you know, when he went over to the UFC, he's managed to turn it around. He has lost some matches, but then, you know, he's made a comeback, beat Bigfoot Silva, Stefan Struve, Roy Nelson. You know, of course, had that big win over Frank Mir, and now, you know, it's time to see if he could beat Brock Lesnar or not. You know, he is older. You know, he's 42 years old, and Lesnar's 38. So, you know, a little bit of an age difference, but, you know, as they always say, like, power is kind of the last thing to go with, like, a big fighter. And, you know, Mark Hunt certainly doesn't show any signs of weakening. So, yeah, like I said, I myself think Mark Hunt is going to walk away the victor of that one. You know, kind of going on, another matchup is, and it's a rematch. It's Frankie Edgar against Jose Aldo. You know, that'll be an interesting match again. I know, you know, Jose Aldo won last time. You know, Jose had that loss to Conor McGregor, and you know, I could do a whole other video on, you know, my opinions on all that and Conor McGregor. But, yeah, you know, that'll be interesting to see. You know, it's surprised, you know, Jose lost to Conor McGregor in 13 seconds like he did. But I do think he could pull off a win here against Frankie Edgar. You know, it's definitely possible. But Frankie Edgar, you know, is a very tough opponent. They say of all the wrestlers, he's picked up boxing better than any wrestler. So, again, that's an interesting matchup. The other one is Miesha Tate against Amanda Nunes. And my prediction there is I think Miesha Tate's going to pull that off. Although I believe Amanda Nunes is also on kind of a winning streak herself. I know she lost some matches. She lost to like Alexis Davis and some other fighters. But it'd be interesting to see, if she would be able to, pull it off or not. But I think it's probably going to be Miesha Tate in that matchup. And the other matchup is going to be Cain Velasquez. And Cain Velasquez will be fighting, I think who his opponent is going. Oh, Travis Brown, that's it. Yeah, Cain Velasquez will be fighting Travis Brown. And again, another interesting matchup. Cain Velasquez, you could make the argument that at one time, Cain Velasquez was the best fighter maybe in all of MMA. I definitely thought that. He had incredible cardio for a big guy, for a 240-pound guy. Probably his cardio could be compared with just about anybody in the UFC. And, he had a loss, to, I believe it was Fabricio Verdum was his loss. And, now he also lost to Junior Dos Santos, that's right. And I guess it's been plagued by some injuries, but, it'll be an interesting matchup. I think Cain could pull this off. And my prediction is that Cain's going to win. Although, Travis Brown, kind of a prodigy in his own right. Really good fighter. Very big guy. Supposedly, I think his background was actually in basketball, and I don't think he's been training for a real long time. But he picked up MMA really quickly. Real, big athletic guy. So, be interesting, but I think Cain's going to pull that matchup off. I think he's going to pull it off and get the win. So, it'll be interesting. There's a few more matches on there, but, I just wanted to say, who I felt was going to win with those matches. Oh, yeah, another one I should actually mention, and that's, it's Juliana Pena against Cat Zingano. Cat Zingano, I don't know if she's still ranked number 2, but I know she was ranked number 2 for a while. And again, that's also an interesting one because Juliana Pena, I remember she was on The Ultimate Fighter and really showed a lot of promise on that. I remember she won her final match against someone who had a really long boxing record. She managed to win the match. And then she also had some injuries, too. And now, she's returning and, facing, a tough opponent in Cat Zingano. So that one, I'm probably going to lean more toward Cat Zingano, although, could easily be Juliana Pena. I mean, it's really hard to say. I just haven't seen enough Juliana Pena matches to really make an assessment. Maybe she's improved a lot. She already was good. But, yeah, so, that's all I really have to say right now on, UFC 200. I know it's going to be a huge event. Like I said, probably the biggest, UFC pay-per-view event of all time. I mean, I'm sure they'll do huge numbers for this. So, yeah, that's all I've got. I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good day.